everybody, it is Halloween week 2014, and just as I did last year, I thought it would be fun to mark the occasion of Halloween by talking about some monster movies this week. And those of you who were with me at this time last year may remember that I did some movie reviews of the classic Universal horror series. Well, my theme for the monster movie reviews this year is going to be zombie movies. All this week, I'm going to be reviewing 5 classic or important, influential zombie movies. The first zombie movie I'm going to be reviewing this week is what some consider to be the first zombie movie. It is 1932's White Zombie, starring Bela Lugosi. Now, this is sometimes called being the first zombie movie, the father of the zombie movie. I prefer to think of it more as the grandfather of the zombie movie as we know it today, because while there are some similarities, there are also a lot of differences in terms of the presentation, in terms of the nature of the zombies themselves as we see them in this film, and we'll talk about that. This was the first major, what you might call self-identifying zombie movie. I mean, depending on how you define the concept, depending on what you consider to be a zombie, there were other zombie movies before this. There were Frankenstein movies before White Zombie was released in 1932, and the Frankenstein story is essentially a zombie story. It's a reanimated corpse. The Golem is not technically a reanimated corpse, but has elements in that story that are very similar to zombie stories. So there were similar films, similar themes, similar stories before White Zombie, but White Zombie is the first horror movie that is a self-identifying zombie movie. Zombies in the title, the monsters in the story are referred to as zombies. They are reanimated corpses, or at least humans under some sort of a trance that is forcing them to behave as mindless, reanimated corpses. The story is very different than you might expect if you started watching zombie movies with more modern stuff. If you started with, the George Romero zombies, or the more recent zombie movies, or The Walking Dead, that sort of thing, White Zombie will feel very different to you, because the zombies in White Zombie are the product of voodoo. And that is actually the original meaning of a zombie. Zombies originally were these, there was a very sort of mystical religious aspect to them. They were raised from the dead by dark magic. They were a voodoo entity. And the idea of zombies that we see them today as the result of something supernatural, or the result of a virus or radiation or something, that one of the causes that is more typically used in one of the more modern zombie movies, that's not in White Zombie. The zombies in White Zombie are mystical. They're religious. They're magical. They're raised by a spell or by a curse. Bela Lugosi plays the guy doing the cursing. And he is sort of in his prime in this movie. Other than his role as Dracula in Todd Browning's original Dracula movie, he's probably best known or most recognizable for his role in White Zombie. The movie has kind of a cult following. Obviously, Rob Zombie named his band after it. He's a big fan. And it's really a Bela Lugosi movie. If you're a Bela Lugosi fan, you will enjoy White Zombie. Has a lot more in common with what we think of as like a classical 1930s vampire movie than we might think of a zombie movie. We think of zombie movies, we think of characters sort of trapped in isolated locations, being surrounded by zombies, being, inundated on all sides by threats. And White Zombie feels very different than that. White Zombie is much more in line with our expectations of an old school vampire film. Bela Lugosi's character turns people into zombies much in the same way that a Dracula or a vampire character would turn people into vampires. The plot involves a man who is in love with a woman who is about to get married to someone else, and he goes to Bela Lugosi, the voodoo master. Bela Lugosi, the voodoo master, in Haiti, by the way. The whole thing takes place in Haiti, which adds a somewhat troublesome racial element to the title, White Zombie, because they're white people in Haiti and they're turned into zombies. white zombie. So the guy goes to Voodoo Master Bela Lugosi and he says, hey, the girl I love is going to marry somebody else. Can you help me out? And Voodoo Master Bela Lugosi says, you know what will really help is if you turn that babe into a zombie. And that's what he does, because that is Bela Lugosi's solution to every problem in this movie. There's an earlier scene that he has between him and this same guy where he offers to lend him some zombies to work on his plantation, because he says, you know, I've got zombies working in my mill, and man, I am just making a killing. You need to put some zombies out there on your plantation. He's a very pro-zombie. He employs zombies as a labor force. It's also revealed that some of these zombies are Bela Lugosi's former enemies, people that wanted to harm him, people who were rivals, someone who was his former voodoo master that he betrayed and turned into a zombie. So he's very zombie-centric in terms of his problem solving, and he turns the man's love into a zombie. And that's basically the plot, and as you can probably tell, it's very similar to a vampire or a Dracula story plot. The girl is turned into a zombie, her fiancé, who is sort of the hero of the piece, tries to find her and tries to free her from the embrace of the zombie, as it were. It's very, very much like a Dracula movie. And it's not terribly distinguished cinematically. It's a very important movie in terms of the history of zombie films, and that's why I mention it here. And it's a lot of fun. It's a good movie to watch late at night if you want something to sort of watch and laugh at and have a good, you know, mystery science theater type experience. It's a great example of Bela Lugosi at the height of his powers. I think the director's mantra was, when all else fails, just shoot Lugosi. Because there are all these crazy close-ups of Lugosi's face, Lugosi's eyes, doing those crazy eyebrow things that he would do. And it's a lot of fun, but it's not really what I would call a good movie, a great movie in its own right. But there are some elements to recommend it. There's some beautiful matte paintings, there's some beautiful scenery. The major set, sort of Bela Lugosi's castle, again, reminiscent of a Dracula movie, is really, really awesome. It's a beautiful, huge, high-ceiling set with big stained glass windows, a big crumbling stone staircase, which is sort of a prerequisite for a 1930s Hollywood horror movie. Great scenery. And even some of the cinematography is interesting. There's a really striking scene after the hero has lost his fiancée, after she has been taken and zombified and he's not sure where she is, and he's sort of sitting alone in a local bar, and you just see him at a table just drinking his sorrows away, and you only see the other patrons of the bar in the form of their shadows. Their shadows are thrown on the wall, and it's very impressionistic. It's very sort of, it reminds you of like something you would expect to see in like a German expressionist film. You can definitely see that influence, and it's a really striking scene. There's just the one human character sort of in the middle of the frame, and all the other people in the bar are just suggested by their shadows on the wall. It's a really, really striking scene. There are some other scenes that use lap dissolve, that use double exposures to sort of suggest like what the characters are thinking or voices that the characters are hearing. So there is some experimentation. There is some sense that the director and the filmmakers are having some fun and trying to be creative about it. But overall, it feels kind of clunky. The climax feels a little forced. It feels like, well, of course that's what happens, you know. But there are some interesting themes in it. One of the things in terms of zombie movies that White Zombie features that is interesting, that has been explored a bit more in more recent zombie films, is when one of the characters is cursed and turned into a zombie. There's a scene where he's sitting with Bela Lugosi as he is becoming a zombie, and Lugosi is talking to him, and he's saying, you know, it's a shame that you've lost your ability to speak, because you're the first person I've done this to who was aware of what was happening, because the person being zombified knows he is turning into a zombie. And Lugosi says, it's a shame I can't talk to you about this, because you're the first person who is aware of what is happening to him as it happens. And that's an interesting part of the zombie horror film that was carried forward into the more recent versions. There have been films, for instance, the Romero's Dawn of the Dead, where one of the characters is bitten by a zombie, and his transformation is worked into the story. One of the other films I'm going to talk about later this week also has that as a major part. The process of becoming a zombie, of turning from human to zombie. So White Zombie introduces that and at least mentions it, even if it doesn't explore it a great deal. Although that yearning to remain human while becoming a zombie, sort of wanting to hold on to your humanity as you feel it slipping away from you, that is something that plays into the climax of White Zombie. That character does make a decision to sort of hold on to his humanity for as long as possible and try to do the right thing before he becomes a zombie. So it does play into the story of the film a bit, even if it's not explored a great deal while it happens. Well, if you're a fan of horror movies, if you're a fan of zombie movies, White Zombie is definitely a movie to check out. If you like Bela Lugosi, if you like sort of old, creepy, cheesy Hollywood horror movies with great big crumbling sets and the sort of the stereotypical common image of a classic 30s horror movie, White Zombie is definitely one you can check out. It's not very long. It's only a little bit over an hour long, so it won't take up a great deal of your time. And it's really the first zombie movie to consider itself as such, to call itself a zombie movie, to feature zombies, even though the zombies are a lot different than the ones we might be more accustomed to. Now, the next video in this series is going to be a review of what I consider to be the real father of the modern zombie movie, the zombie movie as we know it today, and that is, of course, George Romero's original Night of the Living Dead. Check out that review next.